What's going on, guys? It is Bromley, and today we are getting to know your athletes. We're covering the heats from Clash on the Coast so that you guys have some insight, because surely you're all going to tune into the free live stream on Core Sports, and you're going to want to see the finals, which will be broadcast on ESPN so many weeks after the show. So you're going to want to get a heads up on who these guys are, what they've done in the past, how they kind of rank with each other, because there's 30 plus guys being represented, and any insight you have, it's going to make the experience that much better. So we're going to go into Heat 1. Now, for those of you that don't know, Strongman's been around since the 70s. It's always been the big guys. Many people still see it that way. But the smaller divisions, the smaller weight classes, the women's divisions, the masters divisions, they're all starting to get a little bit more attention. Now, assuming we can keep it from going all the way into powerlifting territory where there's more divisions than there are athletes, it's good, I think, that we have this exposure and representation, because there are a lot of different types of athletes that are being represented. So even though these aren't necessarily the mass monsters you're used to seeing, you're seeing guys who look like football and rugby players, who look like linebackers, guys who are small and compact and lean, but also super fast and insanely strong. And it's a different type of show. So these guys, they deserve the recognition they're getting, and I'm telling you, it's gonna be a good show. You're gonna want to tune in, because some of the feats that get pulled off are pretty insane. Now, the biggest shows for the 105 so far have been amateur nationals for Strongman Corp, U.S. nationals. United States Strongman's a different federation. They have a really good nationals, but it doesn't have the pro card incentive. So that, oddly enough, makes actually a pretty big difference, because the pro card pulls a lot more competitive people, even though they're both on equal footing as far as amateur organizations. So Strongman Corp gives the pro cards, and then they host a few pro events. So they'll host America's Strongest Man. They'll allow the pros, if for their very next contest, to go compete at the Arnold Amateur World Championships. And you'll compete on the same stage as the big guys do in Columbus, Ohio. So there are some bigger shows in Strongman Corp for the middleweights. They're just kind of few and far between. Now, Official Strongman Games is the other big one, and that's only been around for the last probably 4 or 5 years. They are ran by the organization that does World's Strongest Man, and that is kind of their answer to Worlds for these other weight classes. So that is more of an international contest, and it does cover all the different classes for both men and women. Now, that is one of my favorite shows to do, because you get a lot of who's who there. You get Colin Bryce and Eddie Hall and Bill Kazmaier. You get a lot of who's who of strongman there, refereeing, judging, emceeing, which is fantastic. But you also get a big international presence, and you get pros alongside with amateurs. If you're not a pro, you go to an online qualifier. So that's how I got in. And it's a good way to go around the back door. You don't have to fight out to win the right contest, because Strongman Corp only gives 2 contests a year where they give out a pro card. So it's very hard to get, but that's also what makes it valuable. Now, I call Clash on the Coast the most competitive contest for the middleweights, because there are 30 plus athletes. They gave invites to 13 established, successful pros and a couple of international people who won big contests on an international stage. And they had the rest vie for a top 20 position in an online qualifier. Now, if I look at something like OSG, there were about 33 people at the last one. I'd say about a third of them were very competitive. Same thing with the Arnold, which pulls out an international presence. Out of 30-some people, about a third are very competitive. This show has over 30 people. I would say about 90 to 95%. There's only a couple of guys I can think of that aren't really on the level just because they had to fill spots. But I'd say 90 to 95% are highly competitive, as in any one of them could get a pro card on the right day. So that's going to make this a very densely competitive show, unlike anything we've seen so far, and I'm fully expecting some upsets. So let's get into Heat 1. Heat 1 starts with Isaac Mays. I met him at Official Strongman Games in 2019. He took second right behind Anthony Furman. Furman in his prime is one of the most dominant strongmen around in this division. He has over 800-pound deadlift. He's very strong overhead, very athletic. He's very fast. He has no weaknesses. Mays placed right behind him by a very narrow margin. And there were actually some pros that didn't make it into the top 10 to go to day 3. So it was a very competitive show, and I watched the guys in the top 3 in just absolute awe, because 1, 2, and 3, it was Furman, Isaac Mays, Marcin Sandwicki, who's Polish. There was a pretty big gap going from 3rd place into the rest of the top 10. You could tell these guys, they weren't just good. They didn't just have a good day. These guys were pretty damn dominant. Mays is my favorite for this heat. I think he's an obvious shoo-in. He beat me in a Viking press, which pissed me off, because press for reps is one of my best events. I always think of myself as unbeatable in that. I've push pressed 320 for 10 out of a rack. I thought no middleweight was going to take that. We had a Viking press that a ton of guys zeroed. I got 12 reps. I had a strategy to pace myself. Mays just grinded out 13, and I ended up tying for second. And then I'm pretty sure Mays walked on me in just about like every other event besides the deadlift. So he's a very good squatter, which is going to help him. There's a squatting event here. He's very good with the dumbbell. He can rep over a 200-pound dumbbell. And he's very fast at moving events. He doesn't really have any weaknesses in this heat. So Mays is my favorite for taking this heat. Go down the list to Anthony San Lorenzo. Now, I underestimated this guy because I have competed with him at some of the bigger shows. I've seen him at Nationals, place kind of mid-pack. I've seen him at the Arnold, place kind of mid-pack. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere at Nationals this last year, he took first. And there were 73 guys. He actually tied with Justin Moy for first. So that's how he got his pro card. 73 amateurs showed up. He had a extremely good show. I think he got a lot better, but I think it was also a good representation of events for him. So showing how he went from taking 8th at Nationals in 2019, and that was a year they had a hurricane that had relocated. There were only about 22 or so people. Taking 8th at that Nationals and taking 13th at the Arnold the year after in 2020, that's really nothing to shake a stick at. But he had a massive upswing the last couple of years. And I want to see him perform at some more shows to show that there's consistency and that it wasn't really just a fluke or the right mix of events. He pulled a 765 deadlift, I think, at this last Arnold. He's pretty decent overhead. He has a 235 dumbbell. But this contest is going to come down to time. It's going to come down to the moving events, how well-rounded you are. You can't win all the moving events and zero the squat. Similarly, you can't dominate the squat and be the slowest guy in a moving medley. So we will see how well-rounded he is. Dan Hughes. Dan Hughes is one of my favorites here, and I'll explain when I get through the rest of these guys. He's relatively new. I've only seen him at this last Nationals. He took 10th, 2 spots behind me against 73 guys. He took 10th. I was 8th in that one. He moves fast when he beats other people with these heavier moving events. When he actually hangs, I think he got close to a 355 axle press. He had it overhead and just couldn't quite get his feet under him. Very strong, good deadlifter. I think he pulled a 755 for 10 on a trap bar, which again is huge. So again, this guy's well-rounded. We'll see how he does on the squat. There's still some questions about where depth is going to be and if that's going to match up with how the guys have been training. But he looks to be very well-rounded. I would not be surprised if he took that second place spot, even though as far as a competitive record, he's pretty unproven. Next up is Bob Schwantz. I've seen Bob Schwantz compete for probably the last 5 years or so. He took 5th 2 years in a row at Nationals. Now, keep in mind, these were bigger Nationals where they had 60-plus people. Keep in mind, top 3 gets a pro card. So he was that close on 2 separate occasions. That shows that he is consistent, shows that he is well-rounded, and he is competitive. And in 2019, he took 11th at the Arnold, but I don't think he's done much since. So I don't know if he's going to be dialed in. I don't know if he's going to be healthy. But a healthy Bob Schwantz circa 2017 or 18, I think would absolutely be a candidate for top 2 here. So we'll see how that goes. Now, Nick Stock is the unknown. I couldn't find a lot of competitive stuff from him. It doesn't look like he's been at any of the big Strongman Corp or OSG shows in the last couple of years. He may compete in United States Strongman, but I didn't dig up the results of those nationals. I'll see if I can find them. But aside from his Instagram, I don't know a lot about him competitively. Now, his Instagram is interesting because Nick is probably statically one of the strongest guys here. I don't know about his deadlift, but it looks like he has a low to mid 700-pound squat, which probably makes him the biggest squatter out of this field. It looks like he's very good overhead. He's very comfortable overhead. So it will be interesting to see how he translates that into a show like this. So I never bet on the statically strongest guy unless I have some reason to believe that they are well-rounded. So I'd have to see him in his moving events. I'd have to see his grip on the farmers. I'd have to see his endurance on this loading medley. There's 5 implements. You have a minute to load 5 implements, 40 feet. That's a death medley. That's horrible. That's something that wipes people out. So I don't know if he is well-rounded. If he has been competing for a while, if he does have some experience under his belt, he will be the guy to look out for because statically he looks like he's in. He's probably going to win the squat. Assuming he doesn't have any hiccups on the overhead medley, he'll do very well. Likely winning, if not taking second to Mays on that. And then just watching him axle clean, he's very explosive. So he's probably going to do well on the keg toss. So it's really going to come down to how efficient you are on those 3 moving medleys. That is a big chunk. In this specific list of qualifying events, because there are 3 moving medleys, squatting 100 pounds more than somebody is weighted much, much, much less than being a second faster than somebody on a carry. That's what this show is. I can't stress enough how important it is to be fast, to be well-rounded, to be athletic, and that's what we're showing. So this is heat number 1. My prediction, based off what I do know about these people, I'm going to call Isaac Mays for an easy win in this one, and I'm going to call Dan Hughes likely for second place. From what I can tell, Dan is very well-rounded. I don't know what weaknesses he has against this group. The other guys, there's either enough unknowns or I do know of some holes that they likely have that I'm not willing to bet on them. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. So that's heat 1 for Clash on the Coast. If you know these guys or if you have any feedback or thoughts, let me know. We're going to be going down. There are 6 heats to get through. So we're going to be putting one out every day leading up to this show. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.